South African words that shock Americans.
Americans say gas station. South Africans say garage or petrol station. Americans call this a pacifier. South Africans call it a dummy. Americans say beef jerky. South Africans say biltong. Americans call this toothpaste. South Africans call it Colgate. Americans call this butter. South Africans call it rama. Americans say baloney. South Africans say polony. Americans call this medicine. South Africans call it muti. Americans say sidewalk. South Africans say pavement. Americans say ketchup. South Africans say tomato sauce. Americans say bar or pub. South Africans say tavern. Americans call this scotch tape. South Africans call it sellotape. Americans call these markers. South Africans call them kokkies. Americans call this soda or pop. South Africans call it cool drink. Americans call this grits or cornmeal. South Africans call it pap. Americans call this an elevator. South Africans call it a lift. Americans call this a mosquito. South Africans call it a mozzie. Americans call this an eraser. South Africans call it a rubber.